take a look at the world. Thailand, Myanmar, Pakistan, Sudan, Chile, Argentina. If you open the pages of history or look at current news, you will find countless countries where military tanks have surrounded the presidential palace, where generals have appeared on television to announce the suspension of the Constitution, and where democratically elected governments have been overthrown at gunpoint. Military coups are a cruel and recurring reality in global politics. Now think about the United States. The country possesses the most powerful, expensive, and technologically advanced military in history. Its warplanes, aircraft carriers, and troops are deployed across every corner of the world. The U.S. military is so strong that in theory it could overthrow any elected government within hours if it wanted to. Yet in reality, this has never happened. In nearly 250 years of history, including the catastrophic Civil War, there has never been a successful military coup in the United States. Not even a serious plot or attempt has been observed. The very country accused of intervening in governments around the world has never faced a threat to its own government from its military. Why is that? What invisible armor or wall protects American democracy from its own armed forces? How did the Founding Fathers create a system that ensures the sword always remains subordinate to the pen? And what institutional, cultural, and professional factors compel American generals to stay in line and follow the orders of elected leaders? The deepest and most foundational reason for the absence of military coups in the U.S. lies in the nation's very origins. Its founders, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, were students of European history. They saw how in the Roman Republic, generals like Julius Caesar used their armies to seize power, and how in England, military leaders like Oliver Cromwell toppled elected governments. From these historical experiences, they harbored deep mistrust and fear of a permanent standing army. They believed a large professional military posed the greatest threat to Republican independence because its power and discipline could easily turn an ambitious general into a tyrant. From this deep mistrust, they designed an extraordinary and far-sighted system within the U.S. Constitution and governance structure to place the military under strict civilian control. For example, according to Article 2 of the Constitution, the Commander-in-Chief of the country's armed forces is the President, an elected civilian leader, not a general or admiral. This means all ultimate military orders come from a political leader accountable to the people. Any general who disobeys the president's orders is committing treason. The founders did not rely solely on the president to control the military. They divided power. According to Article 1 of the Constitution, only Congress has the power to declare war. More importantly, Congress controls the purse strings. Only it can approve military budgets, determine troop numbers, and allocate funds for weapons. Constitutionally, no military funding can exceed 2 years, making the armed forces constantly dependent on elected lawmakers for their existence and supplies. Additionally, the Second Amendment, often debated today regarding individual gun ownership, was originally grounded in distrust of a standing army. The founders envisioned the nation's defense resting on a well-regulated militia of ordinary citizens, not a centralized permanent military. Over time, this militia system evolved into the National Guard, but the principle was to disperse military power rather than concentrate it. These constitutional safeguards, the president's civilian leadership, congressional financial control, and decentralized military power, create a strong foundation ensuring the U.S. military remains an instrument of the state, not its master. Beyond these formal protections, U.S. military coups are further prevented by a complex, intentionally divided structure of armed forces. In many countries, militaries are centralized and homogeneous. In the U.S., armed forces are divided into 6 branches: Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, Space Force, and Coast Guard. Each has its own command structure, budget, culture, and institutional interests. Historically, this has fostered both healthy and sometimes unhealthy inter-branch rivalry. A general in the Army cannot simply order a Navy admiral or Air Force general to participate in a coup. This internal division and balance of power make coordinated rebellion nearly impossible. Another unique feature is the National Guard, which is not a federal force but state-based. Each state's governor commands their National Guard units, not the president. Although the president can federalize them if needed, normally they remain under state control. If part of the federal military were to rebel, governors could deploy their own guard units to counter it. This disperses military power across the states, further preventing concentration. In addition, the U.S. has a vast network of armed institutions under civilian oversight: the Department of Homeland Security, FBI, DEA, and thousands of state and local police forces. Altogether, around 18,000 separate law enforcement agencies exist in the country. This multi-layered and decentralized system ensures no single military center of power exists. To execute a coup, conspirators would need to coordinate all military branches, the National Guard, and thousands of independent law enforcement agencies, a nearly impossible task. Perhaps even more powerful than constitutional and institutional safeguards is the invisible wall built in the minds of every U.S. service member: their professional ethics and culture. At West Point, Annapolis, or the Air Force Academy, cadets are not just trained in warfare, but inculcated with the principle of civilian control. They are taught that the military's role is to execute the policies of elected leaders, not to make policy or govern. This professionalism is at the core of American military culture. Every U.S. service member, from enlisted soldiers to top generals, takes an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. The key term here is domestic enemies. This means that even if a high-ranking government official violates the Constitution, the military's duty is to defend the Constitution, not the individual. This oath ensures the armed forces remain apolitical constitutional guardians. American exceptionalism also plays a role. The deeply ingrained belief that the U.S. is unique and superior, founded on liberty, democracy, and the rule of law. In this view, a military coup would not only be a political act, but the death of the very ideals that make America, America. This belief is deeply embedded even among military personnel, making the idea of a coup almost unthinkable. It is not that civilian-military tensions never occur in U.S. history, far from it. During the Civil War, Union Army Commander General George B. McClellan often criticized President Lincoln and hesitated to follow orders. Despite believing Lincoln was unfit and even aspiring to run for president, McClellan never considered marching on Washington. Lincoln ultimately exercised his constitutional authority to remove him. Similarly, General MacArthur, a legendary commander during the Korean War, openly disagreed with President Harry Truman on war strategy, even writing to Congress and making public statements against presidential policy. In April 1951, Truman made the controversial decision to relieve MacArthur of command, stating that the general had defied the Constitution. This demonstrated that no general, however popular or heroic, is above the law. More recently, conflicts like General Stanley McChrystal's resignation during the Obama administration or debates over nuclear authority during Trump's presidency show that civil-military relations can be tense but are resolved within constitutional mechanisms, not at gunpoint. However, modern America faces new challenges. Political polarization has reached unprecedented levels, influencing not only civilians but some members of the military. Declining trust in democratic institutions such as elections, courts, and media creates a dangerous vacuum where undemocratic alternatives might seem attractive, including military intervention. Some political actors have attempted to use the military for partisan purposes, undermining its apolitical nature. Extremist infiltration of the armed forces, including white supremacist or anti-democratic groups, is a growing concern. Although small in number, these individuals pose a serious threat to cohesion and discipline. Events like the January 6, 2021 Capitol attack, which involved some military veterans and even active duty personnel, demonstrated the depth of political division and its potential to influence the military.
While these challenges do not indicate an imminent coup, they suggest that the historical and cultural foundations protecting U.S. democracy are no longer invulnerable.